Raw on Netflix was kind of a big deal. The question I had though was how well did it perform overall? And how will ratings play a role in how Netflix will adapt the product with WWE going forward? So let's talk about results, the ratings for this episode of Raw, because it's got some interesting indications in there. And then we'll go through a couple other things talking about the future of WWE Raw on Netflix, the influence and tweaks and changes to the product, because things are going to change. They're going to change drastically, I think, over time. So WrestleNomics posted this on their website stating, quote, in the US, they revealed Raw had 2,600,000 households viewing live plus same day, according to third-party data provided by VideoAmp. The press release notes, and it is consistent with Nielsen data available to WrestleNomics, that the household measurement is 116% higher than the average for Raw on the USA Network in 2024, as measured by Nielsen. So they had quite a few people watching Raw on Netflix. And anecdotally though, just even for me, I would hear more conversations and in real life, in reality, of people being like, oh, I see that there's wrestling on Netflix now. Oh, I might check it out. Like people getting back into it or texting me just saying that they're sitting down to watch this first episode. And that doesn't really matter much. That's just anecdotally, but it's interesting that their marketing, their push, WWE's and Netflix's push behind all of this has that much reach. WrestleNomics continues on by saying the press release also announces the program had 4,900,000 global live plus one views, which Netflix defines as a total view hours for the program, divided by the runtime. WrestleNomics says that it's our nearest proxy for average minute audience, with a cutoff at midnight Pacific time that day. So they're saying that the measurement is close to how Nielsen typically does the viewership data for the US. Almost 5 million people, according to this anyways, tuned in for this debut. Now, the thing we have to keep in mind, I think, with all of this is the fact that this is the first debut episode of Raw on Netflix. It's live. How much of it is going to be sustained? How much of it is just people casually clicking on it and hovering over it and watching a minute or two of the show? Is that like almost 5 million people just watching it beginning to end? We don't know that, and Netflix is going to release the data that they want to release, right? Still a staggering number. Like, it's almost Attitude Era numbers, which is cool. But like anything, when it's season premiere of Raw, they changed networks, SmackDown on Fox, now USA, NXT changing networks, there's typically going to be that initial spike of viewership, and then the numbers average out over time. And that's really what I'm looking to see is over time, where is Raw really gonna fit in all of this? But we'll talk more about like ratings and what they really mean anymore. WrestleNomics did continue on by saying that in December 2024, Raw had an average viewer per household of about 1.36. So they're saying that if we apply that to this household data from VideoAmp, that would put the viewership for the Netflix premiere somewhere around 3,500,000 viewers. And in 2024, Raw on the USA Network averaged 1,660,000 viewers, according to WrestleNomics. So like on paper, WWE and Netflix would probably look and say, hey, we went from, 1.5 million viewers or 1.6 million viewers to nearly 5 million or 4 million. It's insane. Like, those are crazy numbers if they are kind of in line, right? But the cool thing, I think, is that ratings, well, I don't think they're gonna matter so much anymore, and I think it's a good thing. There is always so much chatter online, outlets, podcasts, personalities, dummies, people everywhere talking about AEW's rating this week was XYZ, NXT was this, and Raw was this. I don't think that they're irrelevant by any means. I do find it a little fascinating to hear about what the ratings were for all of these shows. And it's interesting to me as a fan forever, because I do kind of follow that stuff, but I find it always interesting that I don't care what the ratings were for like the basketball game or a baseball game or anything, or for another TV show. Who cares? Unless it's like this show you watch, it was on regular TV and they said, oh, it did a crazy number, 6 million viewers, like an HBO show. And then I just go, oh, that's kind of neat. But with wrestling, it's always been interesting how fans and pundits and people will always come out and say, like, look at what this show is doing. Oh, the ratings are down for Raw this week. Oh, everything is terrible. Or ratings went way up this week. But with WWE taking Raw to Netflix, it really feels now that ratings won't matter anymore. And I do think it's a good thing, because I think the industry and people can move away from using that as a specific metric to gauge whether or not a show was good, because it is all subjective at the end. Like, we are all going to look at it and say, this show was good, this was bad, this segment was good, it was bad, this worked for me, it didn't work for me. It's all subjective because it's entertainment. No different than you watch any other TV show or consume any other content or music and you go, this is good, I like this song, I don't like this song. But then we could maybe move away the conversation from the ratings war. AEW did this many views, 600,000 viewers, and NXT did 800,000, Raw's 1.6. And I say it won't matter anymore. I think that it will be there in some capacity, and we don't know how often WWE, Netflix, anybody is going to release these numbers, and how accurate or what spin Netflix can just tell you whatever they want. They could say Raw was watched by 10 million people. We don't know where the data comes from. They could try to dig it out, and they'll probably release some press releases when it matters. They talked about how Raw surpassed Squid Games, so that's pretty cool. But I like the fact that we could maybe move on from just the data side of it to tell us as fans, this is good versus this is bad. And look at it more from just, okay, well, how did the segment do? And how was the product overall? How was just the show? How did you feel about it? But the next thing I want to know is, will WWE adjust their storylines based on the Netflix data? Now, hear me out for a second, because as I say that, you might be thinking, well, dummy, they don't really, or they might a little bit change their story plans based on how they would get the ratings results for what, were popular segments on USA. And even now with SmackDown and NXT, they will change things based on how it is received. Yes, I understand that, but I'm trying to say, like, with Netflix's data, AI, how they probably can measure things way deeper than what traditional cable can measure. I think even Triple H alluded to this in the Raw press conference, where he was like, they're showing me all this data and I'm looking at this and telling them to suck it and I don't know what matters or not, we'll figure it out. But he's like, there's so much more data that they have to work with to give them way more indicators of what's working, popular, etc. So I'm kind of wondering that with a new era of wrestling, of WWE, will we see things change week to week, month to month, based on how it's kind of received? And the other question is, how will the format change for WWE Raw over time? The debut episode, I think it's its own self-contained thing. It's this own little bubble and like example we got to kind of put over there, because there were 4 matches, it's 3 hours long, and it was a lot of applauding and patting on the back for this, welcome to Netflix type of thing. Put that into a vacuum. I'm curious where we are 3 to 6, 9 months from now with the product. Will we see significant changes? Over the last year, we have seen a lot of changes with WWE's product, how it's produced, doing the backstage segments a little differently, following the superstars to the ring, but still getting, traditional backstage promos. The debut episode on Netflix showed us at least a few different things. I thought that we had different camera angles, which I felt helped freshen things up. It didn't feel like the normal way Raw was shot, which is a good thing. And if you look at things like entrances, not all the entrances, but some, like Roman and especially The Rock, it could be just for the arena and how they staged it all, but I actually really liked how they had much more of a, lower shot of The Rock at the entrance ramp, and then you could see the fans above and behind. And again, that could be just because of the way the arena was set up, but I like that they might be changing up just how it looks aesthetically for different superstars and how they want to kind of shoot them. The other thing was promos. We saw a lot of people do a lot of promos and short ones that were like during commercial breaks, for example. I'm in Canada, so we didn't get a ton of ads on this episode. We got like a quick fade to black and instantly brought back into the action with commentary, or we would see the segments of, Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest doing the promo. I don't think that was during a commercial break, but you know what I mean? They were doing a lot more of these promo segments that were not in the traditional, my guess at this time is Rhea Ripley, and then enter Rhea Ripley. They were changing it a little bit more, and I really like that. So I think that they could be playing with a lot more of the formatting and getting out of the confines of the tradition of have promo in ring, have promo backstage with interviewer, and that's it. They did an interesting thing too when you watch the Punk Seth match, where at the beginning Michael Cole is calling Seth Rollins by his shoot name. He said, oh, it's Kobe Lopez, and he trained for Punk, and this is 20 years ago, and that evolved him and whatever. He changed, he's become Seth Rollins now. That stuff I feel is interesting. Some people may not like it because it's a lot of breaking the fourth wall, but they're characters and it's entertainment. And when we look at Triple H's, that whole intro piece that they did talking about the evolution of pro wrestling and WWE over time, Triple H talking about in the press conference too, about how they are really trying to focus on expanding and embracing what they are, not shying away from it in terms like work and shoot and promos and all this stuff, but really embracing the fact that, hey, we have this world, this universe, these characters, let's play with it a little bit more. Let's embrace more of who we are, because they are expanding their audience globally now. And speaking of Triple H, when he did that press conference, he also talked about how WWE will learn from what is considered like good for hitting their milestones and their metrics. And then he even said in there, and I'm paraphrasing, but like what metrics and milestones they got to hit that they're going to be happy with, because they're the big old partners now, and then trying to blow them away and exceed those expectations down the road. So how do they go beyond what they already did? Focusing on that point of like, okay, they want to make Netflix happy. They want to hit all of these marks, not marks like I'm a mark, my name is Matt, but more of hitting these milestones for the product. And then how do they go beyond that? What is next? I think one of the things they will probably do more of is the bigger PLEs, bigger stadium shows like they have done, doing that for more of their shows internationally. And again, in a lot of the other markets, it's all on Netflix now. So you can make it a much bigger deal, and you're gonna have a bigger audience for those shows. And maybe even the PLE formats are changed a little bit. What I mean is promos being added in there. Maybe we don't have just the 5-match Triple H card. Maybe they do up it to 7 when they need to, because it's on Netflix. And I mean, just like Peacock and everything else and stream, they can make the shows however long they want. The 3 hours is kind of a good window. But the other thing they could be doing is more of the 2-night PLEs like we've seen. So we know SummerSlam is going to be 2 nights. I think that 2026 Royal Rumble, I think it was announced for Saudi Arabia. So maybe not Rumble, maybe it's another year. But I think more of their big shows become 2 nights. I think eventually the Royal Rumble will become a 2-night show. I can see them doing Money in the Bank as a 2-night show. You've added more titles. You got the men's and the women's divisions. You're going to want to hype things up more and expand these rosters. NXT is huge. There's a lot that you can do with the PLEs. I think too with Netflix, what they could be doing is add in more of the original programming. The back catalog right now for what's on Netflix, it's just kind of a mixed bag of stuff. I can see them adding in way more original programming, stuff like the WrestleMania 40 behind the scenes documentary thing they did for YouTube. I think they would do more of that stuff. They have endless footage. There's cameras on them all the time that they could put stuff together, even to hype up PLEs like a Rumble, Chamber, Mania, all of the stuff. They can just toss it on Netflix if they want to tell kind of a backstory of, let's say, John Cena going after the record-breaking title win, and he's trying to go to WrestleMania for it. They could tell that in a documentary style series, mini series on Netflix all the way to WrestleMania, which honestly would get you as a fan maybe a little bit more invested in it, and different characters too. What if I got like a little mini doc series on Karrion Kross or the New Day or anybody else that I felt like, oh, they need more time to shine and they're not going to get it in the confines of Raw every single week, and they're going to get a 3-minute segment and a 10-minute match. Maybe they can move beyond that and they can do other stuff. But one thing that I think they need to do though is figuring out, looking at that first episode, again, I think it's in a vacuum. I want to see where we're at in a couple of weeks from now, but pacing I think is going to be something they have to focus on. We had 3 hours and I felt like things were going well. Then they went to 2 hours. Now they're back to like 3 hours or whatever the hell they want to make it every single week. I think that they will need to figure out pacing for Netflix, how commercial breaks will come into play. They might just treat it like regular Raw on TV and it may not make a difference. But with some markets getting fewer ads, some getting more ads, how is that going to play into it? And we know that they haven't done a draft. They've got like the transfer window stuff. Will we see more crossovers for different stars? We know Roman Reigns is teased on the Raw in the 27th that he's going to show up, probably to just reveal 2K25. But will we see Roman Reigns maybe show up more on Raw? Cody Rhodes more on Raw? Will brand splits basically end and they just cherry pick talent and stories to have them cross brand when they need to? Kevin Owens attacked Cody Rhodes on Raw. Raw moving to Netflix, I think, does change things in big ways. It's not going to be perfect. There's going to be stuff that we think is good and things that we think suck. But what did you think of Raw on Netflix this past week? But if you guys want to talk more about Raw on Netflix, we got this video right here talking about The Rock and his segments on Raw and really what we kind of thought about it, the direction they might take with him. Have a great day. See ya.